Hey guys, Simon Trezellian again, voice of reason. Alright, let's carry on with this elemental story, shall we? So, we left you at earth and water. So now let's look at fire and air. So, it was said that Prometheus stole the fire from the gods, and in that moment, mankind became realized. Because it's the element of fire that actually creates us human. Warms our food, warms our caves, allows us to create, allows us to build. There's nothing that you're wearing, nothing that you're sitting on, or anything that hasn't been built by the use of fire. So fire is a massive activator. Where does it come from? You know, I mean, science will say, we'll bring two gases together and increase the temperature and you get a flame. But what is the flame? A flame is a living, breathing thing. It takes oxygen in, just like we do as human beings. It creates, just like human beings. And it destroys, as we've seen, just like human beings. So fire and people are very, very similar in that way. So fire has always been used as a great destroyer, but also it's a great leveler. This fire of the spirit is what creates actual change. It's the firing of the neurons in your head, in your brain, that actually create the change that we actually need right now. So even though there's a lot of destruction, what happens after it is growth. And you see this in forests. In fact, when I used to live in Australia, there were several trees in Australia that had nuts that would only crack open with fire. So they could only germinate, they could only actually increase as trees when there was fire there. So they needed that fire to come in. Fire is what creates passion, it creates energy, it creates everything. Now, obviously, the Dark Fallen ones understand this as well, and they're using that fire in order to destroy, but what are they wanting to create? Not what was there before, that's for sure. Okay? They're looking to create something that wasn't there and was never meant to be there. And what will probably happen now is that in this story, which again is for entertainment purposes only, you're going to see a new world. And that order will want something else that most people are not going to want. So when you create a flame and you place any molecule with that flame, and all of you would have done this in chemistry in school, what happens is that the energy of that flame and the heat creates a change in the molecules. It makes it go faster. It spins the molecules, and in that spinning, it creates change. And that's what's happening to humanity right now. And I don't mean just LA. LA is just a part and parcel bit player in this whole thing. We're going to see this all over the world. Mark my words. And it's going to be a change in consciousness. That is the fire. Consciousness is the holy fire, the Holy Spirit. It takes air, aspire, okay? Expire. When we aspirate, we take that breath in, and that breath is the breath of life, the breath of energy, and that is the fire within our hearts. So you're going to see more of these fires, because fire is very easy to create, as we've seen. As I said, bring two gases together, increase the temperature, that's all you need to do. And when you have things like airborne light that can just suddenly touch the ground and ignite it, that is very easy to create, and it's very, very targeted. This is what we're seeing, is that you're seeing even things like wood and trees not burning, and yet everything is to ash. Can you imagine the temperature that you need to melt metal? That's being created. Forest fires don't do that. Brush fires don't do that. That's fire that is something else. And fire creates its own weather, so you can't even determine which way it's going to go. creates its own firestorm, tornado. And in that top of that storm, that's where the energy is. Sometimes that can reach, 1,000, 2,000 degrees. And there's nothing that gets out of that. So let's look at air. You can manipulate air. People have been doing it for ages. You just have to look up at the sky. In fact, this is one of the first days that there's no lines in the sky, which are made by jet propulsion engines, of course, in this story. But imagine that you could put things into that air that would respond to the waves of the angels' harps. Now I wonder what would happen, because in this story, you see, the things that come from the air, what do we do as humans? What's the first thing we do? We breathe. And then when you breathe in everything that's in the air. So in this story, if someone was to introduce something into the air, it goes into your lungs. All of a sudden, those particles are now part of you. And imagine that those particles in this story were able to respond to things like radioactivity, to electricity, to energy, and that they would create a change in you, a change in your molecular structure. But how to actually get that into you, because not everyone that breathes it is going to be changed in that way. So perhaps what you would need to do, if you were one of the dark fallen ones, you'd need to have to introduce it into the body. Now I wonder how they would do that. How would you actually introduce something that would radically alter your DNA? How would you be able to get that into your body? And if you could, how could you make people want to do that? I guess they would have to be compliant, wouldn't they? I guess they would have to believe the science. Because once that's in there, imagine if you were ingesting magnetic particles and then someone drove past with a big, big magnet. You'd be attracted then, wouldn't you? So in this story, the air is being used as a transmission system. And then, when there is something like this video which will go viral, and when things go viral, they go through the air and they transmit to other people. It's interesting, isn't it, that the platforms always talk about going viral? So, the air, when you disturb the air, we talk about that in charisma, don't we? When a person walks into a room, they disturb the air. Imagine you had the ability to disturb the air in such a manner that it would spin out of control. It would suck up the oceans. And then with the prevailing winds, you could direct that air, that energy, which would build and build and build. And when it makes landfall, it destroys everything in its path. We see this with tornadoes and hurricanes and typhoons. Makes you wonder where they start, doesn't it? But if you had the ability in this story to create that, you could put it anywhere. It could go through places like, I don't know, Florida, North Carolina. Yeah, you could create some interesting havoc there, because you could then get rid of all the things that you didn't really want. And just like the same thing with the water and the earth and the fire, they all clear land. And once they clear the land, it allows those people, those angels, to be able to buy the land to use for what they want. The people don't go back. Most of the time they're not allowed to go back. So as we've seen with air, fire, water and earth, the four elements, they can be used for us, they can be used against us. Fire is the most important one though. When you introduce fire to earth, It creates form, creates function, creates things like bricks, concrete, all that type of thing. You can build, providing you have earth, water, air, and fire. You can also destroy. When you introduce fire to water, it creates steam. Steam creates power. Interesting that, isn't it? Once upon a time we had steam engines. And when you introduce fire to air, it creates smoke, but it also creates energy. It moves the air in a specific way. And it creates power, because the fire needs the air. You see the symbiotic loop that's going on here? You got to remember as well, as a human being, it even says in the Bible, I make my man out of clay. I make my man from the dust of the earth. Because you are all of those elements. You are made of water, 80% water. You're made of the same minerals that's in the earth. You have calcium, potassium, iron, everything. The air is in your body. It's oxygenating every cell in your body. So what's the fire? The fire is here. It's the synapses of your brain. It's the fire in your heart. It's the inspiration and the expiration of air that creates the power, the passion. And right now, humanity is under threat. And the only way that we're going to get out of this, in this story, is to find that fire, to find that passion. Not so much in anger and destruction. That's the negative form of fire. But the positive form of fire is intellect, passion, energy, disobedience, the creation of a new way, and the destruction of the old. Let's see how we go. Remember, this is for entertainment purposes only. And like, share, let's get it out there, repost. Simon Trezelyan, I love you. God go with you. Bye-bye now.